Hey friends, guess who's going to CrimeCon UK? CrimeCon, the world's #1 true crime event, is coming back to London from Saturday the 10th to Sunday the 12th of June 2023. Get inside the mind of serial killers and psychopaths, learn from leading criminologists, hear from the families and survivors, meet your favorite true crime podcasters, immerse yourself in forensic evidence, and delve deeper into unsolved crimes. CrimeCon is the ultimate true crime weekend partnered by CBS Reality, the expert-led true crime TV channel. I will be there, so come and join me. Use quote consequence for a special 10% discount. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit crimecon.co.uk and use code consequence to save 10%. If you love true crime, then you need to go. There's going to be content creators with more than 30 of your favorite podcasters, including me. True crime YouTubers, there'll be a live recording studio with audiences. Join me at CrimeCon UK. Go to crimecon.co.uk and use code consequence to save 10% off on your tickets. I can't wait to see you there.
Hi, I'm Chelsea, the host of Crime and Crime Again. There are so many stories that haven't made headlines, so many names you may not know, and I want to tell you about them. On the show, I focus on the lesser-known cases that you may not have heard before. Countless families have fought uphill battles to bring awareness to their stories. There are so many lost loved ones and stolen lives whose voices have gone unheard, whose names have fallen into the shadows. So join me in shedding light on these cases and uplifting the voices of those fighting for justice. You can find Crime and Crime Again on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of True Consequences podcast. Today we're digging into part 4 of the Father Reynaldo mystery. I want to thank Jackie Moranti for writing and researching this script. The entire city of Santa Fe was frenzied. Citizens of Santa Fe no longer felt safe. The peaceful, beautiful city surrounded by mountains now seemed ominous, even dangerous. No one went out at night anymore, and no one talked with strangers. Clergy from all over the state were on their guard. Many of them wouldn't go out to minister unless they were sure they knew where they were going and who exactly they were talking to. Gone were the days of priests dropping everything to perform their ministry to strangers. Editorials in the papers and news reports reflected the urgency that the people of Santa Fe felt around the death of Father Reynaldo. People were demanding justice. The Archdiocese was also putting pressure on law enforcement to solve this crime. Police were investigating every lead, even those that seemed false or outlandish, and they felt like they were chasing their tails. Then, solid leads started rolling in. Detectives were beginning to feel like this murder could be solved. Father Kevin Moynihan was enjoying a quiet evening at the rectory in the Catholic Church in Roswell when he received a call from the Sally Port Motel on December 22, 1982. A man named John asked Father Moynihan to meet him in room 139 because he had a letter for him. He requested that Father Moynihan wear robes. Father Moynihan was immediately suspicious and called Roswell police. When police arrived at the motel, they found John in room 139. He handed them a handwritten letter that read, "John, this message is the most top secret, only to be kept by the people I tell. If repeated, that person shall die. I'm not the Antichrist, but I'll give you to candidates there to be helped by the church, but not let in by anything of God. After the first of the year, I give permission to kill anyone who attacks me or anyone with me by commencing these parables. John." It was signed Robert Sanchez. John told officers to deliver the note to Archbishop Sanchez. John was a Vietnam veteran who had experienced a traumatic brain injury during the war. The police didn't arrest John at the time, but they did keep him under surveillance. John's name was actually Leroy Montoya. When police interviewed his mother, she told them that her son was not violent, but was on a mission to reunite the churches in preparation for the Second Coming. When his sister was contacted, she told police the same thing, but added that she allowed Leroy to watch her children while she was at work or grocery shopping. She also told police that Leroy would leave town for several days without telling anyone where he was going or when he would be back. Leroy had a history of mental illness and was being treated at the VA hospital. She told police that if he stayed on his medication, he was able to sleep, but if he didn't take it, he would get about an hour's sleep and then walk the floor for the rest of the night. Leroy often met with various pastors of different faiths but didn't belong to any faith. He would also go above and beyond to help other veterans when he could. When Leroy was interviewed, he admitted to calling Father Moynihan because he wanted to talk to him about the Second Coming. Police noticed that he was disoriented and wasn't making much sense as he spoke. Leroy told police that he didn't remember anything from the past year, but he was coming out of his daze. He told them that he wanted to reunite his outfit from Vietnam. He was asked if he ever called Father Rivera. His answer was, "No, I don't think so." Leroy told police that he thought his car was bugged and that he was personally called to perform a mission, but the mission had not been established yet. Priests received strange calls daily, but in 1982, those strange calls seemed threatening. There was a foreboding to every call, and clergy of every faith were on guard. Steve Aponte had been living at the Santa Fe Downs racetrack. He had gone to the employment office looking for a job, and something he said made the woman he was speaking with about employment call the police. She would later tell police that he had mentioned Father Reynaldo and asked about his murder. The conversation started out of nowhere, and it seemed to her that he was feeling guilty about the murder. He had been a previous suspect in the murder since he had moved to Santa Fe and sought help from Father Rivera. Father Rivera directed him to St. Vincent de Paul, a charitable organization that rendered aid to the homeless. She told the woman at the employment office that he worked for Ed Prather, one of the horse owners. He stayed in one of the employee apartments on the racetrack and had arrived on August 4th, 1982. He left on August 9th when Prather had come with him to Centennial Racetrack in Colorado. When police contacted Ed Prather about Steve, he told them he didn't know anyone named Steve Aponte. His helper was Richard Sesmiot, and Richard had been with him for 7 years. Steve had applied for a job at the local Pizza Hut in Santa Fe, so police went there to see if he had gotten the job. The manager at Pizza Hut showed them the application but said that he hadn't been able to locate Steve to give him a job. When police went back to the Santa Fe Downs and talked with several owners and trainers at the track, no one knew Steve Aponte. Eventually, police caught up with a jockey named Felipe Perez. He gave Steve a ride from Las Vegas, New Mexico to Santa Fe. Felipe let Steve sleep in his vehicle from July 28th until August 11th when he just disappeared. Felipe and another jockey spoke with police and said that they couldn't imagine Steve killing Father Rivera since all he had with him were some clothes and a small knife. They never saw Steve with a gun. Police made a composite sketch of Steve, but he was never found. On July 26, 1982, right around noon, the Western Bank in Wagon Mound, New Mexico, was robbed. Patrocinio Gallegos had been hanging around town all day. He was at the park in the morning all day talking with 2 people. One's name was Jimbo, and the other, Diane. After that, he was hanging around the alley just south of the bank for a bit. He was carrying a blue suitcase. Jesus Rubin noticed him loitering around the corner of Catron and Nolan. He stopped and asked him what he was doing. Jesus worked for the highway department, so he had to get onto the yard to get to work. But he wondered about Patrocinio. Patrocinio was always a little off. Jesus had known him for years, and he knew that he had been in and out of trouble his whole life. Who knew what he was getting up to this time? Finally, about noon, Jesus was heading home for lunch, and he saw Patrocinio walking toward the bank with Art de Agüero ahead of him. He knew that that couldn't be good. There was something wrong. Patrocinio wasn't friends with Art, and Pat was walking awful close as if he was pushing Art toward the bank. As soon as he got to his home, he called the bank to see what was going on. Art told Jesus, "I've just been robbed by Patrocinio Gallegos." He told Jesus that Pat was running down the back alley towards Jesus' house. Jesus went out the back entrance of his home and moved his truck so that it was blocking the alley. But he didn't see Pat. Pat hung around town for quite a while after the robbery. Roger Valdez said that he had seen a man dressed in a blue shirt with blue jeans and a blue suitcase hiding in the alley about 2 blocks south of the bank. George Sanchez said that he talked with Pat outside of the post office at about 11 o'clock that night. Police thought that Pat might be hiding around George Valdez's place. George had cattle, so there were barns and many other places that one could hide. George said that he had been at a livestock sale all day, so he knew nothing about the bank or Pat. But he did tell police that they were welcome to check his place as long as they closed the gates and didn't let the cattle out. The entire town of Wagon Mound was searched. Anything empty or abandoned, anything that hadn't been used in a while, anywhere that looked like a good place to hide. After 8 hours, police gave up their search. Patrocinio was gone. Federal charges for bank robbery were filed for Patrocinio, and the manhunt was on. A few days later, police interviewed Patrocinio's cousin Frank. Frank told them that he would have nothing to do with him. As far as he was concerned, Patrocinio was a bandido, and a dangerous one at that. Frank told police that Patrocinio had been in prison in Wyoming, New Mexico, and maybe even Colorado at some point during his life. Joe Sanchez and Rudy Conway were just hanging around their house in Watrous, New Mexico, when there was a knock at their door. Rudy got up to answer it, and there was a man standing in the door. He was wet to the bone and shivering. It had been raining all day. The man told him his name was Juan Martinez, and he needed a ride to Las Vegas. He told Joe that he would give him $25 if he would give him a ride. Joe and Rudy asked Juan if he would like a change of clothes and a shower before moving on. Juan told them that he would be grateful for the help. Juan went to the bathroom, stripped down, and took a nice hot shower. He then changed into the clothes that Joe had given him, a black and white checkered shirt and beige pants. He left his dirty clothes on the floor. When Juan finished, he felt refreshed. He was warm, he had clean clothes, and he was ready to head out on the next leg of his adventure. He opened his blue suitcase and pulled out $25. He gave it to Joe. Joe and Rudy both saw that the suitcase was full of money. Nothing else, just stacks and stacks of bills. "Thank you so much for your help, man. I have a meeting in Santa Fe and I'm very late, but I think I'm going to stay in Vegas tonight. Then go on tomorrow." "Of course. We couldn't let you die in the cold out there. We can get you to Las Vegas. We're heading there anyway." The three got into Joe's truck and started toward Vegas. They dropped him off in front of one of the hotels, and that was the last that they saw of Juan. After Juan got out of the hotel, Rudy looked in the backseat of the pickup. There, he saw a fully loaded .380 Browning semi-automatic handgun. They had no idea what was going on, but they both felt that they had narrowly escaped a very dangerous situation. The date was July 28th, 1982, 9 days before Father Reynaldo was murdered. Juan Martinez checked into the small motel that Joe and Rudy dropped him off at. He checked into room number 3. The registration card was signed Ben Padilla from Mays, New Mexico. The man checked out of the motel at 8:30 in the morning. He got into a long bed Ford pickup with 2 other men, and they drove away. Juan was described as being 50 to 60 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds with graying black hair. He is Hispanic. The description matched Patrocinio Gallegos' bank robber to a T. He was also known to use both aliases of Juan Martinez and Ben Padilla. Ben Padilla was his brother-in-law who lived in Albuquerque. Patrocinio continued his journey. He knew a lot of people, and if he kept moving fast, he could be out of New Mexico quickly. And then, police would never find him. His old friend Margarito lived in Las Vegas, so Patrocinio dropped by his place to ask for a ride to Santa Fe. Margarito was happy to do this for his friend. He picked Patrocinio up at the motel at around 8:30 in the morning, and then they went to Santa Fe. Margarito was driving a white 1975 Dodge full-size pickup. This is the same vehicle that the motel managers saw drive away with Ben Padilla inside. Margarito dropped Patrocinio off at the Phillips 66 gas station next to the old Pecos Trail highway. That's when Patrocinio, temporarily, dropped off the face of the earth. He wouldn't surface again until federal agents caught up with him while he was living with his sister in Los Angeles, California. He was arrested by federal agents without incident on October 1st, 1982. The driver's license he had in his wallet belonged to Reverend Joel Davis. Davis was in the hospital at that time, but police wanted to know how Patrocinio managed to get his driver's license. Davis had lived with Patrocinio's sister for a short time. Later, Patrocinio would admit to stealing Joel's wallet when it was left unattended at his sister's house. A few days later, Patrocinio was sitting in an interrogation room at Parker Center Detention Facility. Special Agent Mario Gonzalez read Gallegos his rights, and the interview began. Gonzalez asked Patrocinio about the bank robbery. He told Gonzalez that he was at the bank to talk to the manager about a loan he had taken out for $400. He went to speak with Art because he couldn't make his $15 loan payment. Gonzalez broke in and asked why Patrocinio had taken out a loan in his brother Eugene's name. Patrocinio told Gonzalez that he hadn't done that. It was an oversight at the bank. The brothers had both been longtime residents of Wagon Mound and were often confused with one another. He continued his story. He claimed that as he was speaking with Art told him that he should rob the bank. He told Art that he couldn't rob the bank because he didn't have a gun. He then made his $15 loan payment. Patrocinio said that he tried to just leave the bank. He made his payment and he was done, but Art insisted that he rob the bank and that they could split the money he got from the robbery. He told Patrocinio to pull a gun on him. Patrocinio repeated that he didn't have a gun. And then, according to him, Art took him to the vault and showed him all the money that was there. He began to stuff money into a small blue suitcase that Patrocinio had brought with him to the bank, conveniently. He said that Art put somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 in that suitcase. Then Art and Gallegos went out to Art's car and got in. Just then they saw someone coming toward them. Art told Patrocinio to wait in the car until he got back from the bank. He walked into the bank and Patrocinio took off and hid in a ditch. He said that he left the blue suitcase in the car and he never saw it again. After that, he walked 42 miles from Wagon Mound to Las Vegas without hitching a ride. He said that he borrowed $30 from Linda Baca, who was a friend of his. He then stayed at a motel in Las Vegas and caught a bus to Santa Fe the next morning. He said that he left Wagon Mound on either the 6th or 7th of August. Patrocinio said the following morning he hitched a ride with a trucker all the way to L.A. He went to his sister's house, and that's where he had been staying since. Gonzalez knew that none of this was true. The bank had been robbed on July 26th, and Father Reynaldo was murdered on August 5th, just about the time that Patrocinio was seen in Santa Fe. They also had a story from Patrocinio's brother Eugene. He claimed that they had spoken with Father Rivera the previous May. Eugene said that he couldn't remember the name of the church, but it was the big one, right on Main Street. The brothers had gone to the church to get baptismal certificates because Patrocinio wanted to apply for Social Security benefits. Everyone involved thought that this story was strange since Patrocinio and Eugene were both born and raised in Mays, New Mexico, and it was questionable that they had ever been baptized at all. They didn't come from a particularly religious family. Not only that, Mays is 120 miles away from Santa Fe. A baptismal certificate would have been obtained from the church that the child was baptized in. And during his interview with Gonzalez, Patrocinio had said that he had gotten the baptismal certificates from a priest in Wagon Mound. They each paid $2 and they had never talked to a priest in Santa Fe. Then his story changed a bit. He told Gonzalez that he had gone to Santa Fe sometime between May and July to get his birth certificate. And it was then that they talked with a parish priest at the big church on Main Street. The priest was about 30 years old, about 5'8", and had an olive complexion. When Gonzalez brought up Father Reynaldo's murder, Gallegos said, "I couldn't have killed the priest. I had no gun to shoot him with." Gallegos had been told that Father Rivera was murdered. No one had told him that Father Rivera had been shot. Suspicions rose that Patrocinio could have been the person who murdered Father Reynaldo. Fingerprint analysis was done, but the prints didn't match. Gilbert Ulavari was unconvinced that Patrocinio was innocent in Father Reynaldo's death, though. He had long suspected there were two assailants. Father Reynaldo was a big man. It would be difficult for one person to restrain him. The coat hanger wasn't enough to keep him restrained for very long. One man had to drive him to the place where he was killed. Another had to keep him in line before it was done. Then there was where Father Rivera's car was found, a rest stop in Grants, completely out of fuel. Did the assailant just ditch the car and hitch a ride in the middle of the night? Yes, it's possible. But wouldn't it be easier if someone had come to pick him up? Or if someone had followed him until the car ran out of gas? Then both of them could simply just drive away? And also, didn't he have a lot of money to fuel up the car? It didn't seem like a stretch. But why? Why would he want to kill Father Rivera? Patrocinio knew a lot of people in New Mexico. Would it be a stretch for him to have a friend or acquaintance who would help him kill a priest? Doesn't seem like a stretch. But why? What was his motivation to kill Father Rivera? Did Father Rivera make him angry when he met him back in May? He never admitted to the murder of Father Rivera. He was brought back to New Mexico and questioned about the murder, but without a confession, there was no proof. New Mexico couldn't hold him forever without proof, so they had to let the feds take the reins. Ulibarri was never satisfied that Gallegos was innocent. It was an itch that he could never scratch. When all was said and done, Gallegos was charged by the feds in the bank robbery and served 4 years in federal prison. Gallegos was the best suspect that New Mexico State Police had, but they just couldn't find enough evidence. To this day, the detectives who worked the case then surmised that he may have gotten away with murder. Large letters are stamped on the last page of the report about Patrocinio Gallegos' arrest and subsequent incarceration. Case closed. Next time, police interview James Henry Reyes, who was being held in connection with the murder of Father Patrick Ryan. Thanks for listening, and stay safe, New Mexico.